when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Hello, book clubbers. Hope you're dancing. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. It's time to talk about books. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm here with Lana Bashinsky. How are you doing, Lana?
Good morning. I'm doing well. I'm a teeny tiny bit under the weather, so if my voice gets all wacky, forgive me. I got some tea. We're gonna power through it.
Yeah.
And honestly, since moving to Seattle, despite feeling kind of crappy last night, I had such a beautiful experience that I feel like was my destiny for moving to Seattle. It felt great. I'm a little bit sick, but I'm sitting on the couch. I have a beautiful cup of tea. I'm reading this amazing book. It's so cozy. And you know what? I don't have rain noises playing on a machine.
They're real.
Beautiful rain hitting the window. It was a perfect experience. So I'm overall feeling fantastic and ready
Delightful.
to chat.
Nothing like reading a book with the rain pounding against the window behind you. It's great.
Cozy.
I had to wear my stripes today. I mean, they're not exactly tiger stripes, but had to represent some stripes.
You gotta.
For our discussion this week of chapters 16 and 17 of Memories of Ice, the third novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. We are in it. We are in it.
Whew.
I'm excited to talk about it. Lots to dig into, but we always start the show with a non-spoiler topic so that you can hang out with us and talk books, even if you're not all the way caught up with where we are in Memories of Ice. And we got another great topic from our friend Margo over on the Discord. You can always join the Discord. There's a link in the show notes on every video that we post. And it's easy to find. You go to 5x5 DLC on Discord. We go to the book club section there, and there's breakouts for each of the novels. Margo, who supplied us with our question last week, is back with another banger. Margo says, hey there, here's another topic. I really like when you both talk about the themes/ideas that resonate with you, like loyalty. What other themes and ideas that resonate, and how have they changed throughout your reading life? Also, what have been some favorite books/media for those themes and ideas? A young adult me liked nonconformity and against the grain characters. So I read about mavericks, artists, etc. At that time, I liked Into the Wild and stuff like that. Now it's more loyalty and deep friendship that I respond to. So what do you think, Lana? What are the themes that really resonate with you? It might not even be themes you gravitate toward, but that's just sort of emerge as you're reading something. You realize, oh my gosh, I'm really moved or taken by that.
The theme that I think will always stick to me, and I always gravitate towards, I don't seek it out, but as you're saying, when it's happening, I'm like, this is the best, is, somebody being told that they cannot do something, and then they do,
Right.
Love this shonen anime, love, anytime there's somebody who is like, no, no way, man, you're just a kid. That is my jam. And I think there's not to go immediately into big, therapy mode. I work in video games as a woman, and that's not always been a super friendly space. And so I love seeing stories of people succeeding, trying to do something that they wanted to do and doing it, no matter the hardships. I think books that have stuck out to me about that, I'm going to say a book, and I don't want anybody to stop listening to the podcast because I'm going to say this book because I was dumb and I didn't know what else was surrounding the book. But I read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
I thought for sure I was going to put money on Twilight.
No, oh my God. I've never read Twilight.
And it's the book that really resonated to me was 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh my gosh. Atlas Shrugged, which when I picked it up, I literally walked into the bookstore and I'd gone through so many books at the time that I was like, I'm just going to pull whatever book is on like the people who work at this bookstore recommend these ones. And I was reading so fast that I was like, that one's the biggest one. It will take me the longest, get the most bang for my buck. And I didn't know that it was like a proposal of how society should work and like, F you poors, only us richies are the smart ones. I do not subscribe. I need to make that very clear.
I think it's worth reading some Ayn Rand at some point in your life, just to kind of understand what's going on with that. You know,
if you read it as like a fictional,
I don't judge. I read The Fountainhead. I read
The Fountainhead
Atlas Shrugged. Well. Yeah, so you know, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not judging you.
I know. So let me tell you,
they're interesting
you're
books.
Not, but this show is put on YouTube.
And no one judges online. There's no judging.
On the internet. So I read that book and I just thought it was like a fictional. I mean, it is a fictional book. Again, didn't know the deeper beliefs. It just is a fictional story. It's about like a badass lady who everybody's like, you're a lady, you can't run the trains. And she's like, yes, I can. And she has like all like anybody who is like a guy that she wants to be with. She's like, yeah, we'll hang out. I'm done with you. You're not like nobody's like quite up to her par. She's just having her time, living her life, no matter who's judging her and succeeding every step of the way. And for me, I'm like, that's awesome. I loved that story of Dagny and what she sort of represented just as like a woman taking charge.
Yeah.
And so just as a purely fictional tale that there's no ties to reality or intent, I loved that. And it really like struck me as something that felt very motivational when I was like in school and things were rough.
So there you go. The things that resonate with Lana are the works of Ayn Rand.
Oh no!
Pretty much summed it up.
Oh gosh. And I'll get to the part 2 of like how has that changed, but I want to hear what embarrassing book did you enjoy that you can reveal now, Jeff?
When I read Mein Kampf, it was not.
That's
terrible.
Oh my God.
That was a stupid joke.
Yeah.
That's the Godwin's law. You know, any example on the line always gets to. Anyway, transitioning from that, I have always I resonate profoundly with stories of courage and duty and honor, and self-sacrifice and doing the right thing. I'm sort of a Pollyanna in my own life and sort of relentlessly optimistic. I've been described that way by others. I don't perceive that internally, but that feeling of I do like when that worldview is reflected. That that isn't to say I don't enjoy Shades of Grey stories. I really do. But when the odds are over, and I find this so much in Erikson's work so far, when the odds are overwhelming and there is this kernel of courage, duty, honor at the center of it that persists even through the darkest dark, and certainly we're going to talk about that today. Those things are very powerful for me. The element of Margo's question about how things have changed over time, I think, becoming a father really changed the way things resonated for me in regard to stories about parents, parental feelings and commitment and duty in that regard. So I have definitely, had much more. They resonate obviously because I have that personal experience. I understand the, you understand it from afar, or at least I did. I felt like I did. I understood it in the abstract, but then having an actual child and a child like I do, one of my kids, special needs, and so like having that, understanding the responsibility of that has really changed the way fiction has landed on me. And so yeah, that stuff is very powerful now. I think I always responded to story. I always liked father-son stories, but I always thought about it from the perspective of the son, as I was growing up, because that's what I knew. And now that has flipped, and not just father-son, but parent child of any gender. It's that's definitely changed in me. I'm having a hard time coming up with specific novels that
That's why I can only think of the worst one. We should have thought. It's not like we didn't read it right before the show. I should have waited till I had a book in mind that was not something that I'd just shamefully reveal.
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think. I don't want to offend anyone. I'm sure there's lots of people listening that have gotten a lot of positive feelings out of reading Atlas Shrugged, and I don't subscribe to that sort of philosophy and the way that those books have, I would say, co-opted, but it's not true. It's like the author's intent was there all along. So, but have sort of grown into becoming something more than just parables, is unfortunate, because now, like you said, you can't even bring them up without it having all this baggage. I mean, the baggage was always there, I suppose, but like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with you having read them and gotten something out of them. You don't have to have gotten, I think that's the wonderful thing about reading, is like we can expose ourselves to ideas, thoughts that we don't even necessarily subscribe to, but it exposes you to that, and you can consider it, and you can, preaching to the choir. What were you going to say about
how it changed over time?
Yeah,
I think the biggest thing that changed over time for me is I used to kind of like, I didn't understand, I guess, why representation felt powerful to me. I feel like I was very much in denial. Like, I didn't want anybody to see or recognize that I was a woman. I didn't want people to, I didn't want that to be a thing that people clocked in their head. I wanted people to care about my art. I wanted people to care about the work that I put in, and nothing beyond that. I wanted to be a part of my life. And now I think what has changed over time as I go through my career and I get into, I was in a position where I was like a spokesperson for a company. So I was out and I was talking to people a lot. I run a lot of conferences, and I realized the fact of of who I am, and being a woman and being present in these spaces means something to some people. And over time, it has meant a lot to me too. But I am so unfamiliar with how to like express myself in that way, or to pay particular attention about that in this way, that finding these stories of women succeeding or marginalized communities succeeding have always meant so much to me, over the last, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 years. I know that seems like a big thing, but it was such a change in my life, a change in my perspective of realizing like, okay, I got what I came for, and like I have a foot in the door in the career that I want. I can start being a person now and not just an animation robot trying to get a job. And I think that sort of like acceptance of myself and everything that I am has changed what I enjoy in books and what resonates with me so deeply.
That's beautiful, and I applaud it. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. I think that's one of the great things about getting questions from the audience, is that sometimes we will go places that we didn't anticipate going, and I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Margo, for sending in your question. We welcome more of them from the audience. Please, you can post them on Discord. You can send them as an email to dlcfeedback@gmail.com. We appreciate it. And we got a lot to get to today. So let's get right into chapters 16 and 17 of Memories of Ice. Spoilers starting now. The S is hitting the F, Lana.
The deep understatement. Again, I know I said this last week, but I just keep thinking Steven Erikson's comment on the YouTube video just like rattling around my brain of being like, so fun.
It's going to be fun. The siege of Capustan is going to be so fun. Maybe not the right choice of word. Not the best descriptor there. But it was a thrill to read. So we start with chapter 16 with Itkovian and the Grey Swords being completely overrun by the Teniscari. So up to this point, we had seen the siege start sort of with the vanguard, with the more military wing of the Panian Domain coming and having a more traditional sort of attack assault on the city. And now the hordes of Teniscari have been unleashed, and it is disorganized. It's feral. It reminded me of watching or imagining a zombie infestation in fiction. This just like horde of hungry, ravenous, unarmed, mostly unarmed, just chaos. And he describes it so well.
Oh, so well, and so frightening on, like, I can't help but be like, think about what those people have been through to get to the point where they're like fine just throwing their bodies into like the line of fire, into the line of blades, into the line of danger.
Both, and actually in these chapters,
and just the sheer numbers of them is like unimaginable. There's so many times in these two chapters where Erikson just describes like the height of like the stacks of bodies and like the number of people that would need to be there. And
he also describes how it's not this like religious fervor necessarily, even though they are a religious cult. It's not even like an honoring anything. It's just like
a feral hunger.
Yes, just pure, bestial, ravenous loss of consciousness, sanity. It's just like it's completely. Man, it was so powerful, and over and over and over. Like it is, over these two chapters, it just feels relentless.
And we're in Itkovian's perspective for a lot of this first chapter, yes.
Yeah.
And him just describing like swinging his sword and every possible thing it could hit.
Yeah.
It hits and annihilates. He doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to swing, and he's like killing blows across the board. And he's not like, haha, at least this is easy. Like he's
horrified by it.
Yeah.
And he even ruminates in this first scene of chapter 16 about how like it's awful that he's even having to fight these peasants, these unarmed peasants. He's like, I'm a soldier, I'm a warrior. We shouldn't even be doing this. This is insane. And then we have this amazing scene where he's on his horse. The gray swords are being overrun. He's the last one standing on this horse. The horse is trampling people and biting people and stomping chests flat. And he's, slicing through people. And then he, of course, inevitably gets overrun himself, stabbed, sliced, hatchet left in his shoulder, knife in his knee. Ooh. I was an Itkovian until I got a knife to my knee.
I just like that, Erikson really captured proper first aid because he didn't bleed out because he left the blades in.
Yeah.
Which is what you're supposed to do.
Always leave those blades in, folks. If there's one lesson.
A hatchet through the clavicle, you leave it in. Get a healer.
Let it be, Then the Bruchalion and Carnatus come and take him away. Kind of saving the day there. Then we're in Gruntle and the Tiger Team Tiger, the Thundercats. As I was thinking,
the other side of madness. You were thinking that there's the Thundercats.
The Thundercats. Oh, thunder! Gruntle is slowly turning into Lion-O. Or what's her name? Tigra.
Tigra.
Anyway, I had a crush on her, by the way, as a kid. That's just a window into my nerddom.
And I'm just too young. I didn't really watch the Thundercats.
Yeah, no, you don't know my reference, do you?
No, I've never heard of them.
Anyway, the blood stains kind of turning into tiger stripes on his. He's morphing. He's becoming. It's such an awesome, almost superhero origin story.
Yeah,
for Gruntle. Like we see it happening in real time in this gruesome, brutal way, where they are literally defending this multi-level house, killing the attackers, stacking them in each level until there's no more room, going to the next level, rinse, repeat, except no rinsing. It's just filthy.
It's disgusting. I like it because this section it almost gave me, it wasn't just Gruntle that's getting like the barbed stripes that are the blood forming on his skin into actual sort of tattoos. It's
Yeah.
everybody he's with are sort of becoming
Yeah.
these tiger people. And to me, I'm like, it's almost like, the building of now, elevating the Tiger of Summer into this God of War position, but almost the same way building this band of people together, the same way that the bridgeburners were formed.
Yeah.
He takes these civilian folks, or these recruits, these leaderless fighters, and he makes something of them that is far beyond themselves. And it just, yeah,
It's
awesome.
incredible. They become super team. I mean, and just the fact that they are systematically transforming this building, this tenement building, into a cryptorium
Corpse
or whatever.
cube. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cryptorium. Yeah.
Body cube. Yeah. It is so, I mean, not to jump ahead, but the later descriptions of how it's literally like swelling in the heat, cracking the walls, and how, it's oozing out the windows and seeping. It's just this
Disgusting
building of death. It is so visceral and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But also, those are the good guys.
Yeah. We're like, oh, good job. You did it.
You go for it, mortal sword. Then we're in Bruchalian's POV. Bruchalian, we gotta heal Itkovian, and that female recruit shows up and says, "Hey, Wrath Fener has invoked Fener's Rev, and you have to come here." And Bruchalian's like, "But how did you shouldn't have been able to get here." And she's like, "Yeah, no, it's cool. No, nobody attacked me or nothing. I just strolled down the street whistling." And he's like, "Well,
seems normal, I guess."
Well, he's like, that's bad. This is clearly a trap."
Yeah.
But then he decides to do it anyway. Because that's what a soldier does, right? And we've seen this over and over in these novels. We saw it at the end of Deadhouse Gates with the soldiers standing and not going to save, what's his bucket?
Pormqual.
No, yeah, well, Pormqual giving the order, but then not going to save Coltane, right?
Oh.
Thank you. Because of because they're honor bound to not break a direct order. And here, I think the part of that is the case again, where Bruchalian's like, "Well, I've been given this order. That's what I do. I follow orders, but also I know I'm going to march myself and my soldiers into certain death, into this trap. But I have to do that to make the crime actually happen so that he can face punishment. If he doesn't actually murder us, he hasn't done a crime, and
So
therefore he cannot be
him.
punished."
Also, well, two things. One, I love that he was like, "Oh, yeah, we gotta go. But you, messenger, you should stay here just in case." But he's like saving her, like not being a part of that punishment, like made it very clear. Like the fact that he chose that and she was willing to walk back meant that she didn't know, so she could continue on without living with the guilt of having doomed them all to this thing that she didn't realize was a trap as like a recruit. Was like, oh, that's leadership, baby. That's leadership.
That's one of the things that Erikson does over and over again that is masterful. And I've never seen quite like this, where we get these just completely side characters. She doesn't even get named until,
the
many
end of
scenes
chapter
in.
2.
Yeah. And yet we get a complete arc for her. I care about her. I'm happy to, the fact that she goes from this sort of duped, used, she is a tool of betrayal here, and feels that guilt and volunteers herself up to be, murdered or to be killed because of her guilt, her assumed guilt. And by the end, she's given the only other horse. She's, fighting beside Itkovian. She's promoted. Like, that arc is so awesome. It's as powerful as any main character arc in a
And
novel.
she's the recruit. She's like, yeah, she's here with me. You like see it all through everyone else's eyes, and it just is so.
And
It just shows how much like how many impactful moments are happening around. It just adds to the power of following these like main characters around.
Yeah.
And like it makes everybody feel like they have agency.
And the small dramas of these little, there's so many people wrapped up in this massive epic, but we get time to see characters that just, breeze in and breeze out of the story and aren't going to be around for a long time, but we still, have
Know
emotional attachment to them. It's awesome.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about this scene is, so they're like, well, Fener called us. We got to go to Fener. And they're like, it's obviously a trap. I was like, Fener was the betrayer? Question mark? Color me shocked? They were like in the mask arena. And they were like, somebody's going to betray. And I was like, it's Fener, right? Like, just obviously. I don't know if that was like supposed to be like
a reveal,
but I was like, yeah, duh. Yeah,
I think it was sort of clear, but yeah, you're right.
Okay.
I love how everybody frequently in these novels too, we have seen, things where characters are like, oh, I'm the one. And they're like, yeah, no, I knew that for so long. Literally all of us knew it. Like Anna Rake is like, we gotta keep the secret. And everybody's like, everybody's good.
Everybody.
And even later on in these chapters, Picker is, like in her perspective, she's like, I'm figuring this all out. Obviously, the gods are doing this. And like, I love how people are smart and, they put things together. It's cool. I think it's a function of the thing you keep talking about with Erikson too, is how much credit he gives the reader. It's like he also gives that credit to his characters.
Yes.
Which is cool. Okay, so then Itkovian wakes up. He has this vision. He sees Bruchalian's demise, basically, and it is epic. Epic. The way Bruchalian, knowingly goes into this trap, this betrayal, and this ambush, really, and still fights, and his arms are chopped off, and he's still fighting, and he gets his head gets bisected, and then his sword explodes and takes out more people, and then Hood himself, the angel of death, basically shows up to take his soul as like this
a personal.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, we don't know what that means, but we think it speaks a lot to who he was.
I found that to be very powerful. Like a character that we haven't spent a ton of time with.
Yeah.
But we understand is honorable, and it clearly in this action is very honorable, like sacrificing himself specifically to take down this larger threat, to make sure that the crime is solidified. And there's like the reward or the sort of tip of the hat from death. Like your death is so important that I need to be here personally to take your soul. That was rad.
I loved it.
And it's wild that Itkovian just sort of gets that all in a vision. Like he sees it happen in his mind's eye. And is that where he's also being, no, I think that's later where he gets healed by,
no, that's the Destriant.
Yeah.
No, this is now. So,
okay.
They have Itkovian and he's fighting out and he gets like stabbed because his clavicle chopped, and he sort of wakes up and the Destriant is there, and the Destriant saying, I failed you, because he couldn't fully heal him, but he has bruises coming from all of his joints, and he was able to at least like knit like this, like some of the surface of what has ailed Itkovian from the many puncture wounds that he has, but not like fully heal him. And that's it, that he gives the last of himself to heal him, and then he's gone.
Beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I love this catchphrase that Itkovian, I'm not yet done. I'm not yet done.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. And
and not like understanding like that gains more and more meaning as these chapters go on.
Indeed. This notion of him waking up and Carnatus holding his hand like he's holding his hand and, passed out and completely spent because the Denual healing Warren is so poisoned. And but he was using it anyway and sacrificing of himself to save Itkovian. He says, that moment where he says, I think that's all for me or something like that. I think I'm done. And Itkovian says, I know, but I'm not. It's so awesome. So awesome. It's just that beautiful moment of him just expiring there. And that's when Itkovian sees the messenger and she's like, I did this. I'm the reason yeah. And he's like, no, you didn't. You're good. You're good. And they head off to Prince Jalarkin's palace. Right before that, though, we do have Buke. We check in with Buke a couple of times here in his soul-taken form as the Sparrowhawk, just kind of seeing everything from the bird's eye view. And I love Buke. I'm sad that it seems like Buke is flying off into the sunset because I thought there was going to be more with him, but
Buke is like,
we'll
I got this bird form, and now you know what? I think I stay a bird.
Yeah, I mean, can't blame him, right?
I mean,
if I could be a bird, I'd probably be a bird
forever.
I mean,
if I was witnessing the most horrific, things that any mortal being could possibly witness in their lifetime, maybe I'd be like, the wind feels good.
I can either be down there or up here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Itkovian and the gang show up at Prince Jalarkin's palace, and things are bad.
Not great. I want to say the scouts undersold what was happening.
So good news, bad news. Good news, there's a party happening.
A celebration.
A real feast going on. A real humdinger of a party. Bad news, they're eating the prince.
The feast is made of people.
The feast is made. The party, it's a theme party. That's the bad news, is it's a theme party. They have de-skinned the prince and pulled his skin on two, crossbars. And then the skinned meat of his body is being cooked up, and everybody's having just a great time. Just a great time. Until old party pooper Itkovian pops in the door.
The fact that they describe this as like, hey, this is not just the Teniskari having a feral feast. This is like a celebration. They got the prime cut of meat, the prince, and they're like doing a slow roast. They're having like the 10-hour smoke in the backyard barbecue situation.
Yeah,
is like so gross. It's just
this is the well-fed portion of the cannibals, the people who eat well. They're not consumed with ravenous hunger. They're just they just nibble. They're just they're just enjoying it.
It's so horrific, but it's basically like you said, like zombies or like feral animals.
Yeah.
But when it's described as like, no, they know exactly what they're doing. Did they need to do this? No, in no way did they need to do this. This was their choice. It makes it that much more despicable.
Agreed. And there's a really interesting, I would maybe even call it, reveal here with what the shield anvil actually means. And we sort of start to get the hints of what that role actually entails as Itkovian confronts Anaster, the first child of the Dead Seed, who is sitting on Prince Jalarkin's throne and sort of presiding over this party and ruling everybody. And he says, I see that you are in pain. I see that you are full of despair, and I will take that from you. Which Anaster cannot handle, freaks out. Tell me your interpretation of that.
it was something that I went back and forth between those 2 pages a couple times, being like, I really want to register what's happening here in like Itkovian, like the little peak, like the sort of like a mischievous, like, I have like a card up my sleeve that you didn't know I had, and witnessing like he saw something in him that he didn't expect to see, which is just that he's like fully made of grief. And my interpretation of like as the child of the dead seed, you know, the nature of his conception is he is born of grief. It's something
Yeah.
stolen from a dying man on the
Right.
battlefield. And so like sewn through every fiber of his being is grief, is, and not to mention like just what he has gone and done throughout his life. He's just, that's everything that he is. And so if Itkovian were to take that grief from him, he would become nothing, because it is the essence of his being.
Yeah. I beautifully said. I completely agree. But I thought it was interesting that he has always been this. Like, that's his role as the shield anvil. And I sort of, it galvanized for me this metaphor of a shield anvil, right? An anvil is something that you bang on that absorbs the blows, right? As is a shield. And the idea that he is an anvil, but not to create a weapon. He is an anvil that you beat on to absorb the impacts of everything else, right? The shield part. And I thought, oh, wow, that's an amazing thing. Like he's the designated mourner, you know, he's the one who shoulders the burden of pain for everyone else, which is cool because you see Shield Anvil for, you know, the first half of this novel, and you're like, oh, that's a cool name of a dude.
Oh, you know, that's just another name of a fighting guy.
Yeah. But you know, it really sort of came into stark relief for me at that moment, which I thought was rad.
Yes, definitely.
So then we're back. So that's the end of chapter 16, which, you know, we do our sentences at the end of the show, and I felt like I could have plucked almost any sentence from chapter 16. The writing was so incredible throughout the entire novel, but that chapter 16 in particular, to me, I just felt like every sentence was extraordinary. The prose was so amazing. Go ahead.
I so agree. I think both of these chapters, I was so drawn in that I remember I highlighted a sentence, and then I got to the end of chapter 17 and I was like, oh, I was fully taken in. There's not a moment where I even stepped back far enough to be like, oh, that's a great sentence, I should highlight it for the book. I was fully sucked in. So I have a sentence. Is it my favorite one? Probably not, because I was so taken with the rest of it that I didn't pull them. But I fully agree. I
have half a dozen that I was like, oh, that could be mine. That could be mine. In fact, I'm going to cheat and use one. As we talk about the beginning of chapter 17, we haven't really spoken, you and I, in our discussion of the Malazan Book of the Fallen so far, much about the opening little poems or you know, quotations that start every chapter.
I almost pulled a couple as my favorite sentence sometimes, but yeah, you're right. We've never touched on them.
I loved the one that starts chapter 17 because oftentimes they can be, you know, multiple stanzas or a small paragraph, or, you know, they can be relatively lengthy. The one that starts chapter 17 is a single sentence, and I just found it to be incredibly powerful. What the soul can house, flesh cannot fathom. What the soul can house, flesh cannot fathom. Man, how beautifully articulated that is. And the fact that it's quoted from the Rev of Fener, which is invoked later on. So we understand, you know, in retrospect, how important that is. And it was written by Immerak, first destriant. So the first person, it's very powerful to me that, like, this has been the way that this culture has worked, that when you call the Rev, it is going to be awful for your body, but that's nothing compared to what your soul can handle. It's just like, I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
So we start chapter 17. checking in on our boy Talk the Younger.
Oh.
Oh, Talk.
Oh.
Mistakes were made, Talk.
Talk. Are you sure you didn't just want one little smooch?
Well, he's getting some smoochies. He's getting some hugging and some squeezing. He really is. Even some lickety licks, after he's pooped himself. It's one way to go. It's a lifestyle choice, is what that is.
It is.
I'm not going to kink shame Talk.
Yum.
I'm not going to yuck his yum. He is literally tucked in the folds of the Kachain Shamali matron.
Yeah.
Who's taking care of him like his little baby, like a little baby person.
It is. So again, I'm going to use this word dozens of times. Like horrifying. He's healing and his bones are breaking, and he's healing and his bones are breaking. And just when he thinks he's like sort of dipped into madness, that pain doesn't matter anymore, he'll have like one lucid moment. And they're like, "Gotcha!" And they crush all his bones again. And now his bones have all healed back. He's just completely disfigured. It's like just a mess of existence.
Yeah. I love that he describes it that if he shows any pain, if he moans or reveals that it hurts, she squeezes him tighter. So he has to pretend that it doesn't hurt.
Oh God.
It's so great.
And the passage of time throughout this whole section is so confusing because, he's dipping in and out of consciousness. He's going into these dreams. He's seeing through the old puppy dog eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how long is this going on for? Does it feel like an eternity? Is it hours? Is it days? They're traveling. It's so ambiguous.
Yeah.
And so specific that it
does feel dreamlike and disorienting, and he's in this fugue state almost of being being babyfied. Yeah. But we do get his vision of seeing the fact that his old running crew, who he calls it, Tool, he calls his brother in this section. His old running crew is messing some stuff up, murdering dinosaur knife handers pretty easily. I thought that was awesome. Just like the fact that Tool is riding on the back of one of them, not Baljog or Garath. I don't know which one he's riding on the back. I think it's Garath. He's riding on the back of it and slicing dudes up and messing things up. And talks like, that could be over there.
I want to kill the daggersaurs.
Daggersaurs. Did you just come up with that, or was that?
I came up with it.
That's pretty awesome. Daggersaurs.
Thank you. And then it's he watches them basically. He's like, and they're at a foot of maybe a tower, and then it cuts back to him in reality, and the what's his face is there going, "We got to leave this tower."
Sears they're here. They're at the door.
Yeah.
Run, everybody, run. So yeah, that's disturbing. Okay, then we're back with Perrin, and as the white face Barghast are approaching Capustan finally. Trot's leading them. Perrin has kind of taken a no longer a leadership role, is now second in command.
And they were much closer to Capustan than because this is not Rake and Brood and crew. They're the ones who were 6 weeks out. They were much closer.
It feels like they were a small force that was going to be able to move quicker because they're smaller, and so they were the sort of advancing. We'll get there first. We'll do all that we can, while the much larger army moves slower.
Yeah, and even so, Perrin's like, these Barghast don't know double time.
Yeah, I know, that's funny. He's like, anybody want to move it along? Let's.
And they're like, the bones are fine.
Yeah. Then so Perrin is like sensing Silver Fox. She's kind of keeping track of him. He knows they're moving. He knows but he's kind of rejecting her invading his mind in a more significant way.
Mhm.
They arrive at the Panian camps, and I want to highlight one little throwaway thing that haunted me. I don't know if you caught this or if it hit you the same way it hit me, but there was a moment where they're talking to Spindle, and he's like, well, even your hair shirt has burned away. And he's like, look, it's growing back.
Yeah.
I was like, excuse me, what?
The lore
Growing
of this
back?
hair shirt, similar to like the lore of these side characters. I'm like, the hair shirt is its own character, Spindle's ma. Yeah, it definitely, I was like, gross.
We don't spend nobody comments on it. We don't spend any time about it. He's like, oh no, it's growing back.
And
Your shirt is
like,
growing? Barf.
You gotta maintain the stank shirt. You gotta condition that, grease it up twice for a lustrous shine.
Yeah, very very vivid, that image of the shirt growing. So they arrive. Everything's very, very bad. Corpses everywhere. Awful, awful things. Perrin's like, hey, maybe we should use some of these sapper bombs, the Moranth artillery. And they're like, what, now? Okay, now? He's like, wait, no, not now. Boom, kaboom, everything explodes. He's knocked. There's that incredible image of him literally seeing a pelvis land in front of him.
Just a pelvis. Ugh.
The pelvis.
Like that whole scene, they were like, all right, should we get on in there? And then they're like, we're in here. Like it went from 0 to 60 instantaneously.
Yeah. I love the Sappers. They just seem like these yeah, we'll make it all blow up. We'll go, yeah.
And then they go and they're like, okay, we blew up these so that we could make our avenue through. And then we'll just have to crawl over all these dead. But they're just sleeping. Definitely a bunch of people who are alive still. And they just hug a couple more cussers in front of them. And they're like, hit the deck. And the idea of being there's explosions all around you and landing there, shielding your ears. You can't hear anything. You're just being sprayed with visceral. It was, what an entrance. What an entrance.
That scene was amazing. I mean, the explosions, and I love how consistently the idea of gunpowder, explosive devices, dynamite, for lack of a better term, is the difference maker. Oftentimes, that's in a world of magic, we can still blow stuff up. It's pretty awesome.
I got a little magic of my own, baby.
Yeah. And I love how in order to work with that stuff, you have to be a little bit and all the Sappers are just these
they're risk takers.
Yeah.
Okay, even just there's a couple times, I think it's probably the last chapter, where they're like, yeah, I'd hit you, but I know that you're carrying a bunch of explosives, so I just will tell you I'm mad.
Yeah, he's like,
they're not gonna fight each other because they're all holding bombs.
They're all strapped with explosive devices. I would hit you, except for the fact that you would make all of us explode. Yeah. Then the bridgeburners move in. They're headed toward the thrall. They arrive at the tenement building. Well, they don't even know they're at the tenement building. They get to this ramp, and they're like, well, this is weird. There's bodies all over this ramp. And they start moving up the ramp, and they're like, oh, it isn't a ramp. It's just bodies. Just bodies into a ramp form. It's the worst Tony Hawk Pro Skater level you've ever seen.
But the most immersive.
It really is. The notion that the Tenniscoury were like, they're way up in the building. How can we get there? We'll just work with what we've got.
Resources? Yeah,
work with what we've got.
They're innovators. In a sense.
Really are.
Yeah,
they are artists.
Culinary innovators. Infrastructure innovators.
Yeah, they're artists. They're not exactly mixed media artists. They're really stick to one very specific material.
Medium, but man, they can work.
They do. They're specialized. So the bridgeburners climb the hill of corpses. Just foul, disgusting. The number of times we are shown just how bad this is. This is very, very bad.
I
Very bad.
feel like the descriptions are so excellent.
Yeah.
And like paired with my own imagination, I honestly, it's something I feel like I cannot think too hard about because I can imagine it so like texturally, like I can imagine in my brain so vividly that if I think about it too long, I can feel like my chest tightening around my heart. It makes me feel I'm like, yeah, pile of bodies. Anyway, moving on. I like can't think about it too deeply.
Don't think about the details of how they all got there.
Don't think about what it would feel like to walk on a pile of bodies. Don't do that. That's bad. Feels bad.
I'm also impressed that he mines new territory. You know, he finds, like, I've seen lots of zombie movies, lots of red zombie fiction. There's, you know, I've never heard of anybody making the ramp of bodies to get into the house that's stuffed with bodies. That's literally every floor. The good guys are killing so many bad guys that they're filling each floor, and then the building itself is expanding and cracking and bleeding. Like, those are powerful images that I've just never encountered anything remotely like that before.
Yeah. Yes.
Incredible. It's a sick mind that came up with these things. Come on.
It's dark.
He seems like such a nice man. We interviewed him. He was such a
He's so kind,
sweet person.
Who knew?
What is going on in there?
Who knew other than everybody who watched that interview? Who knew? The seed of darkness was born in the mind of Mr. Erikson. Incredible
to read, though. And they you know, surmount this awful ramp of awful, and they find Gruntle and the Tiger Clan, the Thundercats, up at the top, looking awesome and camped out.
They get up there and they're like, "Oh, there's people up there." And Gruntle turns, they're like, "I mean, looking good, man."
Whoa, you're okay. All right.
Oh, wow, really vertical slits somehow. Wow. Okay. Cool. No, you look great.
Yes. And Gruntle's like, "Oh, sick armbands, Picker. Those look rad. Can I have them?" And Picker's like, "I can't get them off." He's like, "Oh, right here." Whoop.
Yeah.
And so we are led to believe that Trake / Treach / the Tiger of Summer used Picker to deliver these armbands to Gruntle. I don't yet understand exactly the significance of the torques.
I don't either, other than I assume that they have some kind of power, or like the only other sort of armband things I can recall seeing are the ones that are on the maybe to like reduce her pain.
Right.
And so maybe it's like a pain tolerance thing. But the thing that I actually wish I went back and checked is the person who sold the armbands.
Right.
And like his connection to the crippled god, and he's now a crippled person too. He like lost his legs. He like I think he fashioned the new deck of darkness dragons or something that he gave to the crippled god to like make sure that his house, but I forget who that guy is. And it feels super significant that he would be the person to sell the bands to Picker. But I'll have to go back and refresh my memory as to who that guy was.
Agreed. This whole section is amazing. I mean, another of the sentences that I set aside that I'm not going to use at the end, that I'll, you know, cheat and say now, that made me well up with actual tears, was when Trot says, he turns to Gruntle and says, "There's no such thing as too late." And then Ansi says, "Hello, Capustan. The bridgeburners have arrived."
Yeah.
Boom! Like, I'm just like emotional. Like, yes, they have. They came. They did it. They survived. They got there in time. It was awesome.
Yeah. Just it felt like, oh, this is the beginning of their victory.
Yeah. There's no such thing as too late.
That. This is the beginning of them having fewer bodies in the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that struck me about this, and we're, according to my Kindle, like 55% of the way through this novel, this feels like the end of any other novel. This feels like a crescendo. The good guys arrived in time. The good guys held out. They weathered this incredibly powerful attack and survived, and the city did not fall to the Panion. It feels like this is satisfying. We get a lot of our good guys coming together. We get some people dying. We get some people, sacrificing themselves for others. We get this like denouement almost of, wow, that was amazing. Well, and I mean,
here's how they broke up the rest of the army, and
yeah. And even like Gruntle, like going back to normal at the end and talking to Stani, and like all of that feels like the end of a book,
I did actually the same thing where I was like reading and I was like, oh man, I guess they won. And then I was like, 55%. That time will tell. Time will tell.
It's just amazing to me that these are 10 novels, and yet there's so much stuff that happens that we even get this, this
2 for 1.
Yeah. The level of satisfaction, I guess, is the word.
Yeah.
In halfway through that, I'm like, wow. All right. So there's a really interesting scene that happens now where we're in Picker's POV. Stani walks up to her, who has before that, I guess we had the healing moment of Gruntle saying, I did this all for a lady. And they're like, which lady? He's like, the lady dying over there. And Mallet was like, I can save her, and runs over there. And this amazing thing where the tent like gets ripped off. And
I assumed that was like, so Mallet goes over there. He's communing with the Barghast folks, we assume, because he's like, you're really willing to like sacrifice this? Oh, I mean, all right, let's do it to it. Like, it's this, like, I know that like the sacrifice moment that's happening internally because we witnessed it sort of firsthand before. But it's like this simple thing, and he heals her. And when Stani goes, ugh, basically, Gruntle's like, what the hell's going on in there? I assumed that he ripped the tent off just out of like the shock and like that, again, the sort of animalistic reaction of being like, something's happening. What's happening? She's fine. How did you do that?
That was my first reading of it as well. I read that scene like 2 or 3 times. I went back and kept reading that little section over and over. I actually think that Gruntle is as surprised as anybody that the tent gets ripped off. I think what actually happens is like some sort of godlike force rips it, like so the unleashing of the energy or the moment of healing Stani like does that. And you could be totally right, because that was my first thing, was like, he's like, whoa, but I read it a couple of times, and I think it might be more that everybody is astonished by some grander effect happening.
Interesting. Yeah. That seems highly possible.
But either way, I thought it was incredibly cool, and just a powerful notion that this woman who's at the heart of Gruntle's motivation, she is actually going to be pulled from the brink of death and healed, and it does mean a lot. And somehow her hair changes color, right? Oh, it turns red.
Oh, I didn't. Oh. Yeah, I remember them saying that red-haired woman, and I was like, "Who's that?" I was like, "Oh, I guess it's Stani."
Black. Her hair had been black.
Yeah.
Which I realized that the cover of the novel, I didn't realize. There's a number of different covers that have over time. Is Gruntle standing there with his 2 swords and Stani with red hair? Because I didn't know who that was, because it has red hair, and he's standing there with the 2 swords, and he has. If you look close, he has tiger stripes. So I was like, I didn't even realize that was. Anyway.
Is that the one that's on the front of your Kindle? That's not the one that's on the front of mine.
Yeah, that you have the one with the dude like looking back.
No, I have somebody with a shield and an axe.
Oh, yeah, no,
like that.
Yeah, I have the one with that's I'll put it up on the screen, but it's
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so Stani comes walking up to Picker and is like, "Hey, Gruntle's different. That's weird. What's the deal with your torques?" And she's like, "I don't know. I don't even know. Gods are weird.
Yeah.
It's amazing how like your friend is like, you know, the mortal sword of this other god." And she's like, "Well, I'm not aligned with that god. I already aligned to the Caruli's god." And she's like, "What's the deal with gods?" And Pickard has this really interesting insight where it's like, "Hey, we are sometimes they work together. You know, sometimes they do stuff that's mutually beneficial." I thought that was interesting.
I thought it was interesting and how quickly she turns from like, you know, I didn't want those armbands. I don't want to be, they might work together. I don't have any desire to work for somebody like against my will, against my knowledge. I don't want to be a part of this. And then I think it just kind of clicks in her head being like, hey, wait a second. We know somebody who was once upon, pun intended, for upon, and she sort of turns around and she's like, "Hey, Perrin, what's your deal?" And like sort of immediately calls him out on stuff because I think she's putting the pieces together of like, oh, gods be meddling. Are they meddling?
Not even just gods be meddling, but people be keeping stuff from us.
Yes,
like we're not giving all the whole story. Gods don't tell us the whole story. Hey, wait a minute, that guy, he knows stuff. And he's our commander. He's supposed to tell us what's going on.
We're supposed to follow him into battle. I can't trust this guy.
Yeah.
But
amazing. Like, I know it's been this recurring theme with Perrin and his leadership and how, you know, he is this former noble that has turned into a soldier and assumed the mantle of leadership, and everybody sort of doubts him. I love all that, but the way we're constantly seeing him challenged, doubted, having to win over their allegiance and loyalty, I love it. I love that moment where Picker's like, "Wait a minute," and then Ansie's like, "I will literally murder you where you stand."
Yeah,
because you haven't been telling us the truth. Silver Fox has been talking to you. You know where she is. You haven't told us. How much more do you know?
Yeah, and Perrin's like, "Good. Let end. I'll turn my back. Please get it over with." And they're like, "That seems bad that you feel that way, though." And they're like, maybe things are fine. And you're like, it's not as bad as we thought it was. You're not keeping stuff from us that would matter to us. They like his reaction to them calling. Well, it actually made me laugh that Picker was like, "Hey, how's Silver Fox?" And Perrin's like, "It's just fine." Yeah, she's close by.
Yeah.
Like he's like always talks about like being sick, and then she just asks him about it, and he's like, "Oh God."
Yeah,
like,
all that. Have you thought about that girl you like? Yeah. Don't say her name.
Don't say her name. I can't even. Yeah, I just love that he's like not like fully in control of himself in a way that makes me giggle, but I know is bad for him.
It's bad for him, but it's adorable.
Yeah.
I also like how he like turns around. He's like, "Okay, stab me in the back anytime," and they start fighting. They're like, "You can't do that. You know what? Silver Fox will kill us all if you do that." And they're fighting, and he's like, "All right," and then he's like, and he's just standing there waiting to be murdered. He's like, "What's everybody else up to?" And he just has this vision while he's standing there. Everybody's fighting behind him. It just like fades out. You know, you can't hear it. It's like, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
Don't murder. Wah, 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 wah. And then he's just like, boy. And he has this vision.
What is she up to? What is happening?
Just the image of him turning his back to be murdered. And then just, it's not important for him to even pay attention to whether they're going to murder him or not.
Yeah, that very well could have ended with like his vision being like, and then there was a pain in his chest. Like, for all we know, he could have just gotten instantly stabbed. Was that the moment that he starts talking to Nightchill? No.
Yes. They have this incredible dialogue where he realizes that Silver Fox has been reaching out to him, but it's not Tattersail. It's the other aspect of her persona, the soul that's taking up residence inside her. It's Nightchill, which is actually the elder god. He puts together that she's the elder god. She straight up comes out and says it. She's like, my brother, Draconis.
Draconis.
Yeah. This section, this revelation here, let's dig into it, because
yes.
First of all, he sees Fener's hoof come out of the sky.
Oh yeah, that was like the start of it. And I was like, yes, okay, I have a connection to the other book. I was so excited. As soon as he's like, I start seeing pillars and they're green. I'm like, this is it, baby. This is it.
Right. So
is it his fault?
That's what I wanted to ask you is he just witnessing something happening over in Seven Cities that we've seen with Heboric and Bowden and all that? Or is he implicated in that moment in some way as the master of the deck?
Well, we saw that I feel like, I don't know, because there's something that happens later as well that it seems like he just barely touches something. Yeah. And they're like, I guess you did that. And he's like, I guess I did. And so for me, this was another one of those moments. Is it purely by him like looking inside himself and trying to piece things together? Was he actually responsible for it? And then like the touching of the jade desert finger just was like a coincidental moment that coincided with this.
Right.
Or maybe, I forget, like, is it Felison or Heboric who touches it?
It's Heboric.
Heboric touches it. And then like, is he just happening to get like a vision because he is a priest of Fener?
Well, I spent so much time trying to reconcile the two things we know from Deadhouse Gates and here, because so much of what is about to happen in the next couple of scenes that we haven't gotten to quite yet is that everybody's realizing that Fener dying or dead is no longer the god of war. He's no longer
in the Pantheon zone.
Yeah.
He's back on,
immortal.
Burn.
Yeah. On mortal soil. And that Trake has taken Fener's place. But we also know from Deadhouse Gates that Heboric had Fener's power, right? Like does amazing things, is infused with Fener's ability. Like Fener is not dead. Fener is not impotent. Fener can do some crazy stuff because Heboric was able to. So there's a disparity there, because Perrin straight up says, in a couple scenes, straight up says like, oh, Fener's dead, which we know not to be true, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I thought, because they said he's no longer there. He is as good as dead because he, like, just any dagger could take him out now.
Right.
And so I thought the implication was not that he was dead, although I do think you're right that he said it, but I don't think that he is. I think he is just.
No, I agree. I think we know for a fact that Fener is not actually dead, because he's, Heboric is infused with Fener's essence in some way.
Yeah.
But alongside this other thing, right? We know that he has two things inside him too, right?
But then also I'm wondering, like, what does that have to do? Maybe nothing later, not to like jump ahead to like, seeing another priest get their hands cut off.
Right.
And the alien god that's there.
Right.
Like the tattoos that appear on his skin are not Fener's tattoos, baby. Something else trying to get in here. And then they're like, eh.
But it's not this malevolent force, right? Perrin recognizes it as not malevolent, or I guess it's Itkovian recognizes it. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Anyway,
we got to dig into this section too, because after the Fener stuff, Nightchill is like,
he had to dig it for it. It was like the feeling that was there. The fact that Perrin was like, I see you.
Right.
I sense that you are not, like, you're Silver Fox, but you are not the part of Silver Fox that I want in here. Nightchill, that's you. And she's like,
got me.
Yeah, it is. But there's like a sense of like digging for that I liked, but please continue.
No, I think that's a great thing to point out. So Nightchill, so he's basically, his point of view is, I don't want to be master of the deck. You and all your elder god buddies picking me as master of the deck was a massive mistake. I would rather die than be manipulated by a god again after the Opon stuff. So you have to tell me what's going on. And Nightshill's like, no, ignorance is our gift as gods. Ignorance is our gift to you. And he's like, that sucks. Ignorance is not a gift. And she's like, that is an act of mercy for you not to have to worry your pretty little head about all of the god stuff. Yeah. Which I think is kind of a profound insight into religion.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm not a religious person, but I love that insight into just this notion that, you know, the whole God works in mysterious ways thing is, from one perspective, it can be this act of mercy. It's like you can't know the layers, right?
Yeah.
It would mess you up, which I think is a very interesting way to go about it. And her saying, we're not bad. We're not these malevolent things you think we are. We're not trying to mess with you. We're trying to help. And our way of helping is keeping you in the dark.
Yeah. Especially because like the span of a god's lifetime, it's not the same as a mortal's lifetime. And so this idea that it's like, what plans I'm working on, you would not even be able to comprehend them if I told you. It would drive you insane to know what I'm planning for millennia from now. Like, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And then to which Perrin responds, I have hound blood in me, and I can unleash the hounds anytime I want. And Nightshill's like, yes, you absolutely can. You have the power to unleash the hounds now, which I think new revelation there. We don't know. We didn't know that he could do that. She says, the thing that's special about you is you went into Anamender Rig's sword, Dragonpour, that was made by my brother, Draconis. And you were able to walk around as someone who wasn't actually smited by the sword, and you could come and go as you please. That's pretty important. In fact, my brother is trapped in the sword he made, and you talked to him.
Yeah.
Flashback to Gardens of the Moon, chapter 15.
I forgot all this stuff was in like this Nightshill conversation.
Oh, hello, folks. This is the part of the video where our recording software stopped working and neither of us noticed. So we talk about the very gruesome scene where Itkovian and his team sew up Prince Jalarkin's body. It was very funny because we made a lot of jokes about why you would want to spend time sewing up the skin back on the body, and the people that you would have to use in your crew to that were really good at sewing to sew. We did a whole bit. It was really funny, but none of it was recorded. So apologies for that. We'll get right back into it now, though. All right. So after Itkovian and the gang, sew up for the prince, they decide to head over. They've climbed up 24 flights of stairs. They head over to the thrall. Very few of them are still alive, and they show up, meet Gruntle. Itkovian meets Gruntle and is like, I recognize that dude. Boy, he sure looks different. Oh my gosh, I'm now realizing my god is not the god of war anymore, is not the god of summer anymore. I have been usurped. My god has been usurped. The mortal sword has been usurped. This dude is now the mortal sword of Trake. And Fener is receded.
And everybody's realizing that. They're like, well, there's a tiger guy here. Think we all know what that means? Tigers are in. Pigs be out.
Boars are out.
Boars are out.
Boars so last season.
So last season.
Everybody's dressing like tigers now.
Yeah. I really love that in this chapter you get like his realization, and I'm like, oh, this matters because of his vows. Because that just means a lot to him.
It
and
really
even
does.
though we've seen Itkovian like have like this strange power, still the fact my default reaction was like, oh, he must be bummed, and not like, oh, the deep grief that he is taking on from the world has absolutely no release because his god is no longer a god.
Yes. Yeah. Then one of the masked council comes out, Wrath Fener, who we know as the betrayer, invoked Fener's Rev and Itkovian decides, hey, I'm going to deliver your punishment. They push him on the ground to slice off his hands and cauterize the wound with his hot sword, which I thought was incredible. But Perrin is like against this, doesn't think that should be. Everybody's worried because it's like, don't do it.
I think
There's so much tension in this.
I think everybody realizes what it's going to mean for him. And I thought it was so powerful that, even Fener, the betrayer, in his agony, in his own physical agony of like, he gets his hands cut off and they are the skin, like his skin is like boiling and bubbling because there's nowhere for this to go. It's like the deepest punishment. But even he still tries to crawl away from Itkovian, still tries to recede and protect Itkovian because he knows what taking on the grief of him as a being will do to him because there's no outlet. And everybody seems to know what the shield devil knows what their responsibility is, and knows the implication to the fact that Gruntle standing there as the Tiger Man means for Itkovian trying to perform this noble act.
Yeah. And it's an incredible sequence. It's like page after page of Itkovian, scooping up this man, like accepting the pain and anguish of him, seeing this vision of his entire life before him, and how the sort of mechanisms and structure of the institutions of power have transformed him into this awful person that would be capable of this betrayal. Like it's almost it's
he wasn't taught like capable of this betrayal. Like he joins to like be a priest of Fener, and even like the most noble reason for joining in the first place, what he was taught was like using your attributes as commodities to be sold. Like the lessons that he learned while he's surrounded in this, his religion is not the actual lessons of being nice or being whatever, like what, I don't know, Fener's teachings, but it is about like the business of being in that religion. And so there's no way for him to succeed, and there's grief in that, and Itkovian takes it.
And isn't that so resonant for the real world? That the power corrupts, corrupts. And I have read in passing how many people have said that if there's one theme in all of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, it's compassion.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is writ large here, right? It's Itkovian sort of
his reason for being.
Yeah. He's embodying the compassion of looking into someone's very soul and seeing that there's a pathway to get to the evil act. And that pathway isn't evil in and of itself, right? It's a series of stepping stones.
Yeah.
I thought it's just an extraordinary moment, an extraordinary sequence, like realizing that what Itkovian is doing to himself, everyone else realizing it, trying to stop it. And then realizing also that he has to take on all of the pain and anguish of literally everyone that's been slaughtered in this entire city.
And I assume it has been. Like, I assume that, like, that has been happening as he's just been walking through the streets. I assume that at every turn, like, from the moment that he walks in and he sees Annister there and, like, instantly sees, oh, you are grief. Yeah. That's everything that you are. I assume that everything that he looks at, he can get that sense and is taking this on as like a constant stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The length of that scene, the depth of it, the fact that it keeps going and he keeps digging deeper and he's trying to commune with this anguish.
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful. I just could not get over how the journey that we, the reader, are taken on in Itkovian sort of leaping into that void,
Yeah. Yeah. And like leaping into that void and knowing full well that it was intended that he intended this will be my demise, but this is what I'm here for. And then the big question mark of Paran being like, hey, don't. And he's like,
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess I really wish you just let me die, man.
Yeah. And everybody understand, and Picker even says, like, or Blend, I think it is, Blend says, Perrin did that. And, you know, maybe we should have not underestimate that guy. Maybe we should cut him some slack, because, like, there's some stuff going on, and he's actually a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool too. Like, they constantly having these moments where he's winning over more and more of the bridge burners, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the sort of, I think I interpret as the farewell to Buke, where Sparrowhawk is like, boy, a lot of stuff going on down there. Pretty bad. I'll fly like an eagle till I'm free. And he just, Sparrowhawks his way out of there.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I mean, beautiful, but sad. He kind of relates it to his own loss of his family, and he finally has this transcendent moment of freedom. It's like, I'm never going to not be a bird.
Mm-hmm. There's something thinking about Buke. I forget who it is, the Barcast maybe, like that we missed, where they were talking about them making their way through the city, and they're like, oh, I'd like to find any other holdouts kind of thing. And they're like, no, we didn't find anything. We did find like one zombie house, but that seemed very messed up. And so we left.
It does feel like that side of things, the Beauchelane, was conspicuously unmentioned.
Beauchelane.
Beauchelane. Sorry.
Yes.
Another great Tony Hawk level. They're conspicuously unmentioned in these two chapters, and I feel like, what's going on over there? I mean, they were like, hey, we noticed that there were a bunch of undead guards keeping this one house untouched. But I feel like, in the sense that this was the end of it felt like the end of a novel, even though it isn't. I also felt like, boy, that's a big dangling. And the fact that Buke is like, well, my work is done here. Yay! It's like, well, no, the thing you were most concerned about still
is there.
Yeah.
And I guess you're just, man, I thought you and Reese were like bonding. You're just leaving that guy to be his sad necromancer familiar, basically. Come on.
But it is pretty beautiful that Buke, who is tormented by this grief and guilt, and really had no reason to exist, and wanted, chose, his whole introduction was, I'm going to die in service of, trying to save someone just to give my life some meaning, is actually awarded this level of freedom where he literally can fly away from it all, Maybe
Itkovian took that grief from him too. Like maybe Buke was in proximity, and in this moment, it wasn't just that he was like, I could just fly away. Maybe that grief that was driving him in the first place, maybe it was actually taken from him in that moment.
I mean, these two chapters are incredibly powerful. It really felt like, I keep saying, like, closing the book on a major plot, which was Capustan, the siege of Capustan, and it felt like we got to this end. And man, I'm very curious. Chapter 18 is the longest in the novel. I'm very curious to see where we're headed now.
We're gonna learn so much about the bones.
The bones, yeah. I bet you're right. I bet you're right. I loved these two chapters. They are grisly, they are harrowing, they are dark, but there's this kernel of hope and compassion and beauty in all of it. And I feel like also we didn't mention the scene with Gruntle sort of like coming out of it and being like, oh yeah, well, it's crazy. I was a cat man for a while.
Meow. Am I right, guys?
Stoney's like, yeah, I got red hair now. And he's like, oh, you're super hot. She's like, calm down. Calm down, cat man.
I love that, like, that he's back to his normal self, because like, yeah, you want to bang? And she's like, in your dreams.
Yeah. But I love Gruntle now. And I mean, he's become one of my favorites now in this whole sequence. I mean, the child standard all of that heroism is just amazing. So I'm curious to see. I think there's going to be so much more of this Fener Trake dynamic. It clearly has ramifications for what happened in Deadhouse Gates and all that. So lots
Something
to
I
chew on.
haven't thought about a lot at all is any of the parallels between like people being able to use their warrants or use their magic through Deadhouse Gates. I think everybody used magic just fine, and I wonder if that is significant.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that until we were just talking through this chapter. Totally unrelated.
It is interesting. I wonder if you'd have to go back and sort of check the timeline.
See if anybody has anything funky going on.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I don't remember that being a thing. So.
All right. Well, let's talk about our favorite sentences. I already cheated and did a few, but I have more. What is yours?
I mentioned it at the beginning, where I have one that I took right at like the very beginning of chapter 16. And then I ended up going back and grabbing one from chapter 17, but I was just so drawn in. Yeah. The Tenascauri rose like an inexorable flood against every wall of the city, rose then swept over, a mass of humanity driven mad by hunger. Gate barricades buckled to the pressure, then gave way, and Capustan drowned.
Capustan drowned. So good. So good. Here's one of Itkovian's revelations toward the end of these chapters, at the end of chapter 17. The Rev of Fener voiced the truth of war. It spoke true of the cruelty that humanity was capable of unleashing upon its own kind. War was played like a game by those who led others, played in an illusory arena of calm reason. But such lies could not survive reality, and reality seemed to have no limits. It's true, man. It's such a beautiful insight, and he's so good at that. So good at like getting to the heart of an idea that's very complex and it just articulating it so poetically. It's easy for people who command others to wage war, but the truth of what actually happens, the horrors of it, they don't have to deal with it. Then it's easy, it's easy on one side and it's hard on another.
Yeah.
All right, you have another?
I do.
I would like to hear it.
Now the white-faced clans of the Barghest had announced their own inevitability. What the Panions had delivered had been in turn delivered upon them. We are all pushed into a world of madness, yet it must now fall to each of us to pull back from this abyss, to drag ourselves free of the descending spiral. From horror, grief must be fashioned, and from grief, compassion.
There it is, compassion. I have just a single sentence that I thought was just beautiful. This is when it's very toward the beginning of chapter 16 when the battle is happening and it's not yet the Tenascauri. I think doesn't matter. This is just a sentence I think is amazing. I think this is when Brocalion gets attacked. Anyway, doesn't matter. Here's the sentence. I'm trying to give context and I'm failing.
I forgot
miserably.
to give context about it. I was just like, here's a sentence I liked.
Yeah, this is a beautiful sentence. The air of the concourse blackened as 1,500 bows whispered as one.
Yeah. That's like, yeah. I loved that visual. It's when Brocalion shows up at the thrall and he's like,
they're just assaulted.
Oh, it's a trap. And then that's it.
Sky's black with arrows. This is 1,500 bows whispered as one. All right. Let's wrap things up. We do like to recommend other books at the end. And we got an awesome recommendation from a listener. This is the recommendation that comes to us from Grand Saul, who says they mostly lurk in the book channels of the Discord. Gruntle writes, I'd like to recommend The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. It's the first book in a 4-book epic fantasy that draws heavily from Chinese history. The author's pitch for the series is an epic fantasy where the heroes are engineers instead of wizards. Liu has a similar skill to Erikson in writing around themes while also having some of the most efficient character writing I've ever read. No other author has been able to so quickly get me as invested in characters as Liu in this series. He quickly became one of my favorite authors when I read the whole series earlier this year. He also has a similar ability to Erikson in showing both the good sides of humanity with our shying away from the horrors we, collective humanity, can commit. While being very different, I feel like this series is able to scratch a similar itch to Malazan. I can't recommend it enough. He also says, look how beautiful this cover is, the UK cover, which I just put up on the screen. He says, you may also recognize Ken Liu's name as he's the person who translated The Three-Body Problem. He also has a bunch of short stories that are extremely good, including his most recent one called The Passing of the Dragon, which can be read for free online. It was a welcome surprise when Jeff's channel that I'd forgotten I'd subscribed to, presumably when I started listening to We Have Concerns in like 2016, randomly posted the first episode for Gardens of the Moon and quickly became one of my favorite parts of the week. Oh, thank you. You guys' insights have been great, picking up way more than I did on my way through, and I'm excited to see your thoughts on the rest of Memories of Ice. Thanks. Thank you, Grand Soul. Grace of Kings has been on my TBR list for a long time. I have had it. It's been on my radar. It has been a book series that I've definitely wanted to check out, and I have not done yet. But I know how much you enjoyed the translation of Three-Body Problem. So
Definitely. And 2 years from now, when we finish these books,
yes,
keep it on the back burner for the next series.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. That'll do it for this episode. We have, as I said, this plan for the next few episodes, or the rest of Memories of Ice has been laid out for us by our wonderful Sherpas in Discord. And I believe next week we're doing 2 more chapters, right? 18 and 19. 18, very, very long.
I thought that it was.
Is it 3?
I think it's 3 next week. And also knowing 18 is a beefy one.
Okay.
Because that I believe was the recommendation.
Well, there you go. Well, I'll mark it in the
Sorry.
notes, and you can also check the Discord. That's where folks are letting us know the best possible path through. But we will see you then. And on our way out, of course, we got to dance.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. Join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends.